Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Shri Panchatattva ki jai. ISKCON Newcastle Yatra ki jai. Adora Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So this really, if you want. So yesterday we were between New York and where? Butler. Pittsburgh, yes, also on the bus. We went from New York to Pittsburgh, and then we went from Pittsburgh to Butler. And Prabhupada has just arrived in Butler, where his host, Gopal Agarwal, has received him, but first of all he received him at the bus station in Pittsburgh, and then drove him in his station wagon, Volkswagen station wagon, to Butler. And we heard the beginning, or we'll probably hear it again tonight, so we won't mention that. The day before we were basically, well, Prabhupada actually yesterday also arrived in New York, and he went from the boat, which docked in Brooklyn Pier, and then he went to the office, the Skindia team office in Manhattan, to book his return fare. So, and then he went from there to the bus station, the Port Authority bus station, and caught his bus. All this was arranged by Gopal Agarwal so that he could safely come to Butler. So this evening we're going to be entering or being with Prabhupada in Butler, Pennsylvania. Has anybody here been to Butler? Anybody? You were there? Oh, I've never been. Small town.
Yes.
Very small. And you were there on the anniversary ceremony? Or
No, just passing through.
Did Harry down there?
No.
No. Pittsburgh we came. So on this map, I guess you can see a map. Can you see a map? I don't know how clear it is, but Boston, New York, Butler. So the very top right-hand corner of the map, you see Massachusetts written there. Can you see it? And just underneath that to the right is Boston. It meant to be Boston. Boston. On Boston. Prabhupada first arrived, and the boat left there and went down northeast coast of America, United States. From there down to, you see New York, you can see New York, center right, New York. There's a boat docked there, and Prabhupada called the bus, which went then down southwest from New York towards Philadelphia. You can see Philadelphia? See? Yes? Yeah. And then from Philadelphia, or maybe just before Philadelphia, the bus was swung to the west, maybe most likely going past Harrisburg. Interesting enough, that route is very close to a Gita Nagari farm, and then swinging over all the way over on Route 76, all the way on 76, all the way to Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh was where Prabhupada got out of the bus and made its way to Butler. So that's just a little bit of a map of northeast United States, some of, not all, but some of northeast United States. Right, and Prabhupada was alone travelling on that night bus. It was a Greyhound bus. This is a Greyhound bus, I believe. And this is something like the bus station was like in New York at that time. It was, they rebuilt it all. It's not the same bus stand or bus station as it was then. This is supposed to be the New York Greyhound bus station in the mid-60s. I searched for pictures this morning of ancient pictures of some sites in New York and Butler, Pittsburgh, maybe was that. That's the typical Greyhound bus of 1965. There's a few variations, but that was a typical one. Looks interesting. It looks like it's standing potential in there. That's the Pittsburgh, what it was. Pittsburgh terminal about the time Prabhupada arrived in Pittsburgh. But he arrived in the night, so he would not have, you can tell by the cars, you see, more or less. I looked up their website, so this is the year more or less Prabhupada's arrival. And he would arrive there at middle of the night, may not see much, but maybe Prabhupada was there. Then he went to Butler, and this is the apartment block where Gopal and Sally Agarwal were living at the time. I don't say that was the door, there were 3 doors, that's just one of the doors. Could be one of the other ones. I don't see the numbers on there. And this is where Prabhupada was sleeping. This is the YMCA. We heard about the YMCA last night. Because the Agarwal's house was very small, they couldn't really accommodate him. We'll hear more about that, but that's the YMCA where Prabhupada was staying. And this, apparently, I was told it's the room where Prabhupada stayed, but I don't know about that. But it was like this anyway, small room, very small with a bed, simple facilities where Prabhupada stayed in the YMCA. Okay, and now I'm going to read something. Okay. So when Prabhupada was in Butler, he actually received a letter. Oh, this is not in the right order. This is a letter Prabhupada wrote to Samaji Maharaj. I'm starting with this, although it's not in chronological order, partly because it sets the scene. So Prabhupada, of course, was feeling very grateful to Samaji Maharaj. Look who's here. Hare Krishna. Haribo. Welcome.
Thank you.
Jai Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. So Prabhupada was feeling very grateful to Samaji Maharaj for arranging nice facilities in the boat for his journey to America. And so he wrote to her naturally. They were like Maharaji came to the manor when I was there one time, and you would have thought that it was his brother's sister. The way she looked, the way she walked, the way she talked. Wouldn't have had much trouble in if someone said that's Prabhupada's sister, in accepting it. She had a lot in common with Prabhupada in many ways. Very well, just very well held lady. She was really, very cultured, very cultured. And she spoke of the manner, I remember, very nicely. So Prabhupada wrote her a letter, this, I don't know, date, maybe beginning of October sometime. It does say the end, I can't remember. By the grace of Lord Krishna, Prabhupada writes, the Americans are prosperous in every respect. They are not poverty-stricken like the Indians. That was back in '65. The economic situation probably changed considerably, but still, then it was very much so that India was considered a poverty-stricken country in general. The people in general are satisfied so far as their material needs are concerned, and they are spiritually inclined. When I was in Butler, Pennsylvania, about 500 miles from New York City, I saw there many churches, and they were attending regularly. This shows that they are spiritually inclined. I was also invited by some churches and church-governed schools and colleges, and I spoke there, and they appreciated and presented me some token rewards. When I was speaking to the students, they were very eager to hear about the principles of Srimad Bhagavatam. But the clergymen were cautious about allowing students to hear me so patiently. They feared that the students might be converted to Hindu ideas, as is quite natural for any religious sect. But they do not know that devotional service of the Lord Sri Krishna is the common religion for everyone, including even the Aborigines and the cannibals in the jungle. So that was some Prabhupada's letter to Samati Maharaji. She wrote back, we'll hear her reply later on. So now we're going to go, because we're just arriving in Butler, in the early hours of September the 20th. And we'll take up from there, September the 20th. Butler, Pennsylvania, home of the Jeep. You know what a Jeep is? What's a Jeep? Who knows what a Jeep is? In the Philippines, they call them jeepneys. In public transport, it's kind of like, vehicles that drive around. I like jeeps, but bigger sized jeeps that run around picking people up. Colourful, very colourful. Jeepneys. So home of the Jeep. What's a Jeep? Who can tell us? What is a Jeep? You know, Smackers.
Is it like an army?
Yeah, traditionally they were in the army. They were the army vehicles, and it'd be like seats, like at the back, one on each side of it. Cover over an army vehicle. They're called jeeps. They used to transport soldiers around, small ones, big ones, like that, jeeps. So this Butler was the home of the Jeep, and that's where they were, I guess that's where they started making them or something. I read a granite plaque in the city park. Here it says, Butler, famous as the town where the US Army Jeep was invented in 1940, was an industrial city of 20,000 settled amid the hills of an era rich in oil, coal, gas and limestone. Its industry consisted mainly of factories for plate glass, railroad cars, refrigerators, oil equipment and rubber goods. 90% of the local labourers were Native Americans. The nominal religion had always been Christian, mostly Protestant with some Catholic, and in later years a few synagogues had appeared. But there was no Hindu community at that time. Gopal Agarwal was the first Indian to move to Butler. Probably a few more now, I guess. But there were very few. Hare probably, maybe other Indians who come to see Gopal. There were no other Indians in Butler. It was a rarity to see an Indian person. Probably not so many black people either, probably. A very conservative town. As the Volkswagen bus pulled into town, the van, the pre-dawn air was warm and humid. The morning edition of the Butler Eagle would soon be going to the newsstands. Those days, there were no mobile or internet news. Everything was by newspaper. They're not so common now, newspapers. Quite rare. Still there, not so well read. So then it was newspapers. Everybody read the newspaper. 2 or 3 editions daily usually. We would get at least 2 or 3 newspapers a day in our house. We had to pay for them. We get like 2 or 3 a day. 2 editions, same one, but different, another kind of newspaper as well. So you get some various angles of the news. So the news of the day was Red Chinese fire on India. Some skirmish between the Indians and Chinese. Prime Minister Shastri declares Chinese communists out to dominate the world. United Nations Council demands Pakistan and India cease fire in 48 hours. So it looks like Pakistan and India were having a go at each other as well. Srila Prabhupāda, there's obviously some news which might be related to Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada arrived at the Agarwal's home, which was in Sterling Apartments. I showed you an outside picture of that just now. At 4 a.m. and Gopal invited him to sleep on the couch. Their place, a townhouse apartment, consisted of a small living room, a dining room, a kitchenette, 2 upstairs rooms and a bath. They had lived there, here they lived with their 2 young children. The Agarwals had lived in Butler for a few years now and felt themselves established in a good social circle. Since their apartment had so little space, they decided it would be better if the Swami took a room at the YMCA and came to visit them during the day. Now, I did transfer it over, but there's an interview with Sally Agarwal, which I don't have tonight. I have it on the computer, but I didn't put it on this. Here, where she goes into much more depth, a description of how the rooms were used when she had 2 children, Bridge, I forgot the daughter's name, the boy was named Bridge, little boy, maybe the size of Bora, Kran, something like that. And she had a daughter, I think the size. What's your youngest daughter's name? Pardon? Malika? Pardon? Radhika? Radhika. Radhika? Haribo, Radhika? Maybe the size of Radhika. So like that, she had 2 kids, and they were occupying the upstairs bedroom. I guess Sally and Gopal were in the other bedroom, something like that. So they were packed out. They didn't have a very big place. It was a little apartment, really. And so they put him in the YMCA. Of course, living space wasn't the real difficulty. It was him. He was such a good match. There was the embarrassment, in a sense, of having an Indian, elderly Indian gentleman staying in your house was odd in those days, Not now, but in those days it was. How would he fit into the Butler atmosphere? He was their guest, so they would have to explain him to their friends and neighbours. Talk of the town, I remember when the first non-white person moved into our neighbourhood, even in my town where I was born, which was a bit larger than Butler, that's for sure. And it was like the talk of the town. A black man moved in around the corner. Oh my God, what's happening? What's happening to this? People were whispering and talking, what's going on? It's like a big event. Sally hurried off to a Pittsburgh newspaper office, but the interviewer wasn't able to comprehend why this person should make an interesting story. He's very clever. Sally thought if everyone could ask her, why not put it in the news so that everyone finds out and I don't have to keep asking everyone. Intelligent. Sally then took him to the local Butler Eagle where his presence was accepted as indeed newsworthy. So that was the beginning of his time in Butler. I don't know how far we're going to go, but that's the beginning. And I'll read one letter. This is a letter Prabhupada wrote to Narayan Maharaj. And whatever happened later on is another thing, but at this moment of time, Srila Prabhupada had a close, affectionate relationship with Narayan Maharaj. He was like his nephew, and they had a very close relationship there. Please accept my dandavats, Prabhupada offers obeisances, and also convey my dandavats to Muni Maharaj and all the other Vaishnavas there. By the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, which means Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, of course, I have had so much work to do since I came to the West, that although I was thinking of writing you a letter, up until now I could not write. I came to stay here for 1 month. Is it on the screen? Is this on the screen? Is it really?
Yeah, it's on the
That was clever. How did you do that? Anyway, it's done. It's done, it's done. It's good. But if I can stay here longer, the work will be done well. Here they are naturally attracted to Christianity, but they also like to listen to me. Since I came here, I've been lecturing every day in a church, either in a church, school, college, club, or society. Their English is a little difficult for me to understand because they pronounce words differently. And our pronunciation of English is difficult for them to understand. But work has not stopped because of this. They don't dislike my English. In the Butler Eagle newspaper, which is one of the largest publications, tiny little town with a tiny little newspaper, I'll say one of the largest publications, they have printed this article. In fluent English, the devoted Hindu cult explains commission to visit West. A slight brown man in faded orange drapes, wearing white bathing shoes, stepped out of a compact car yesterday and into Butler YMCA to attend a meeting. He is A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, a messenger from India to the peoples of the West. A Hindu by faith, the learned teacher has translated biblical literatures such as Srimad Bhagavatam into English from ancient Sanskrit. He is now fulfilling a mission given to him by his spiritual master to enlighten English-speaking people about their relationship with God. I have explained in detail a short life history. Under my photograph I wrote, in large letters, Ambassador of Bhakti Yoga. Chanting the holy name of God is among the religious practices of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, who arrived on Monday for a month's stay in the Butler area as a missionary in the West. Pictured in the apartment of his sponsor in the United States, Gopal Agarwal, the Swamiji is residing in the YMCA and cooking his own meals in the Agarwal home. Every culture has religion, he says. We are all engaged in service of some sort. The highest service is to the Supreme Lord. The scholar teacher has translated 60 volumes of Sanskrit scripture into English. This is quite interesting, since in 1965 that wasn't the case. Prabhupada done 3 volumes and a couple of small books, but not 60 volumes. But there is, Prabhupada has given some, biography. So they say in 60 volumes, so he's time, place and time, past, present and future. Prabhupada is speaking into the future. 60 volumes. He would do that sometimes, talk in the future. Even you may remember when he went back to New York, there was, of course we don't know absolutely what was said, but what we heard was said. He met one subway worker or something in the park there when the man was asking him what he was doing in India, in America and so on. And the man asked if he had some temple or something here. He said, yes, we have many temples, many followers, and many everything. But there was nothing at that point of time. Prabhupada had no fixed residence, so to speak, of followers. So he was like, seeing the future, the nature of pure devotees. And not very impressive. He would say, I'm hoping to write some books, or maybe I can get a temple in the future, or maybe someone will listen to me. It's not very impressive, but saying like that is quite convincing. At least you could see what was going to happen by Lord Chaitanya's grace. Now, 70 years old, the appointed missionary to the United States was educated in India up to the Bachelor of Arts. He became a disciple in 1933 and received instructions until the death of his leader in 1936. He has severed all family ties, forsaking wife, children, and a business in Calcutta to follow his beliefs. To cross the Atlantic Ocean took 10 days. This great sea is usually full of storms and fog and is very disturbing. But by the mercy of Krishna there was no disturbance. The captain of the ship, the main officer, told me, "This kind of quiet Atlantic I have never seen in my life." I told him that this is only by Krishna's mercy, nothing else. After the troublesome storm in the Arabian Sea, I knew that if I had to face another storm like that again, I would die. I don't know if this is part of the article. No, I think it's not. This is letter, isn't it? It's a letter to Narayana. I am thinking that the preaching will be very good here. I am lecturing some days for an hour and some days for half an hour. The people of America are now tasting some new thing. This is the first time I have come to a foreign country, crossing 12,000 miles. All here are outcasts, meaning not followers of the Varnashram system. Anyone who doesn't follow that system is considered an outcast. Yet I'm never afraid to speak in front of them. For the first time in my life, I delivered a speech in a church. The main thing is that I am alone, and I am in my old age. Because of this, crossing 12,000 miles in a ship, I became very sick. I crossed the Bay of Bengal, Indian Ocean, Arabian Sea, Red Sea, Mediterranean Sea, and Atlantic Ocean. I passed through Asia, Europe, and Africa. I crossed 3 oceans and seas and became so sick. Due to my request, they served me vegetarian meals on the ship, yet I could not take them. I fasted continuously for 8 to 10 days. The pitta or fire in my stomach or my body increased so much that I suffered terribly from colic pain. Afterwards, the captain of the ship purchased an electric stove for me in Port Said. That's in Egypt, you don't know where it is. I then cooked for myself and took prasadam. If they hadn't managed this stove for me, maybe there would have been no possibility for me reaching America. I could have died on the way, but instead Krishna mercifully brought me here. Why Krishna has brought me here, only he knows. It is very expensive here. One room I found in the YMCA has a weekly rent, 55 rupees. Whoa! Can you imagine that? 55 rupees for a week, the rent. Nowadays, that's not even £1, is it? About 60 cents or something?
It's 118.
Huh?
118.
Oh, rupees to a pound?
Yeah.
Oh, not even that, it's not even 50 cents. About 45 cents or something per day. Per week, rent. Can you imagine? Renting a room for 45 pence a week. To Prabhupada, that was a lot of money. Everybody has a motor car. Oh, most people. The labourers earn more here than gentlemen in India. They are paid 80 to 85 or 90 rupees daily. 80 to 90 rupees a day. That's a lot, isn't it? That's about 80 cents, 80 pence a day. Would you work for 80 pence a day? That was like a good wage. Would you get very far on 80 pence a day? Plus it's worth a lot more now. 80 pence then was, you know, it wasn't much, but it was something. Every civilized person, no, everybody has a motor car since all the offices and markets are very far away. Every civilized person has one car, which costs 10,000 rupees each. In India, that same car would cost 50,000 rupees. I was saying it's expensive, but the cars, petrol, everything is cheaper in America. People drive the cars themselves. They have no paid drivers to do it for them. And in India at that time, other than taxes, anyone who had a car usually had a lot of money. They'd have a chauffeur to drive them. Individual people didn't have cars unless they were rich. Very rare. Very rare. Nor do they keep servants. There are lakhs and lakhs of motor cars. When I came from New York to Butler, I saw that on 2 lanes For 500 miles there was a solid line of cars. There was no need of electric lights because there were so many cars. At night in the city, shops are lit up and it appears like daytime. There are so many bridges and flyovers that the cars never need to pass each other on narrow roads. Every motor car is generally going not less than 50 miles an hour. Many houses are 25 to 30 stories high. Obviously not the same person's house in most cases, but you get the idea. In this neighbourhood, there are cottages built on small plots. People are very civilized, but they are ugra, high-tempered, not polite, and humble. All humble. Today in New York, the Pope came. Probably just, he wasn't there when he came, he was just mentioned. On television, everyone saw this. Television is an amazing thing. In that time, I'd never seen a television in India. Just staying in one room, they can watch how the whole world is going on and how they are all corresponding with each other. The days are passed in vain work and the night times in sleep. Here, people are generally non-vegetarian. Without meat, they can't eat anything. I've been taking muri, puffed rice and peanuts with mustard. Somewhere I found mustard. Everything's available, but the price is so high. I purchased 250 grams of mustard oil for 5 rupees. I had to travel to a shop 20 miles distant to get it. If you want to come to this country, reply to me. Swami Maharaj. That was 4th of October, probably, that 65. We'll go back to Prabhupada in Butler, and we'll hear some more things later on about his time in Butler. But these are some of the preaching engagements, maybe. I think we read that part of this article already. But a featured art in the Butler Eagle. It says, in fluent English, devotee of Hindu cult explains commission to visit the West. So a photographer would come to the Agarwal apartment and take a picture of Prabhupada standing in the living room, holding an open volume of Srimad Bhagavatam. The caption read, Ambassador of Bhakti Yoga. I do have a picture of that, but I don't know if you'll be able to see it because we're switching between screens. There it is. You see it? Is it on the screen? So that's the picture they put in the Butler Eagle. Prabhupada stood there holding Srimad Bhagavatam. And I guess that's the wallpaper or whatever. Agarwal's home there behind him. Famous picture. I don't have a view screen here, so I can't see what picture is next. Okay. So we'll go back to the article. And I think we read this more or less, at least some of it. A slight brown man in faded orange drapes and wearing white bathing shoes stepped out of a compact car yesterday into the Butler YMCA. He is A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swamiji, a messenger from India for the people of the West. Prabhupada said, my mission is to revive a people's God consciousness. To revive it. Revive their God consciousness. God is the Father of all living beings in thousands of different forms, he explains. Human life is a stage of perfection in the evolution. If we miss the message, back we go through the process again. He believes. Bhaktivedanta lives as a monk and permits no woman to touch his food. On a 6-week ocean voyage at the Agarwal apartment in Butler, he prepares his meals in a brass pan with separate levels for steaming rice, vegetables, and making bread at the same time. The bread is chapati, it's not exactly bread as we know. Chapatis. And we heard yesterday, Prabhupada said that he had this 3-tier cooker, but he said it wasn't the one he had in India, he got another one. And he was cooking the meals there both for himself and for Gopal and Sally Agarwal. He could cook for them too. And Gopal was very happy to receive cooking, Indian style cooking. He hadn't been getting it. he's a strict vegetarian and is permitted to drink only milk. The miracle food for babies and old man, he said. If Americans would give more attention to their spiritual life, they would be much happier, he says. Yeah, Agarwals had their own opinion as to why Prabhupada had come to America to finance his books and nothing more. That's what they were saying. They were sure that he was hoping only to meet someone who could help him with the publication of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and he did not want any followers. At least they hoped he wouldn't do anything to attract attention, and they felt that that was his mentality also. He didn't create waves, Sally Agarwal says. He didn't want any crowd. He didn't want anything. He only wanted to finance his books. Perhaps Prabhupada, seeing their nervousness, agreed to keep a low profile out of consideration for his hosts. At Prabhupada's request, however, Mr. Agarwal held a kind of open house in his apartment every night from 6 to 9. Sally, it was quite an intellectual group that we were in, and they were fascinated by him. They hardly knew what to ask him, they didn't know else. This was just like a dream out of a book. Who would expect to meet a Swami in someone's living room in Butler, Pennsylvania? You can imagine, huh? In those days, there was only one Vaishnava Swami in America. And they're in Butler, a tiny little place that don't really have very much significance. And there's this Swami and they're meeting him in somebody's living room. Quite unique. It was really tremendous. In the middle class America, my parents came from quite a distance to see him. We knew a lot of people in Pittsburgh, and they came up. This was a very unusual thing, having him here. But the real interest shown in him was only as of curiosity. He had a typewriter, which was one of his few possessions, and an umbrella. That was one of the things that caused a sensation. He always carried an umbrella. And it was a little chilly, and he was balding, so he always wore this hat that someone made for him, like a swimming cap. We used to call them Swami hats, you know. So, cotton hats, things that come down here, like maybe a little button under here. Swami hat. Yeah. And he was so brilliant. It was a kind of sensation. He was so brilliant that when he saw someone twice, he knew who they were. He remembered. He was a brilliant man. Or if he met them on our apartment and saw them in a car, he would remember their name, and he would wave and say their name. He was a brilliant man. All the people liked him. They were amazed at how intelligent he was. The thing that got them was the way he remembered their name, and his humorous way. He looked so serious all the time, but he was a very humorous person. He was forbidding in his looks, but he was very charming. He was the easiest guest I had in my life, because when I couldn't spend time with him, he chanted. And I knew he was perfectly happy. When I couldn't talk to him, he chanted. He was so easy. He was so easy, though. He was so easy. He was a very good guest. He was a very good guest. And the people would come, they were always smoking cigarettes. But he would say, pay no attention, think nothing of it. That's what he said, think nothing of it. Because he knew we were different. I didn't smoke in front of him. I knew I wasn't supposed to smoke in front of Gopal's father. So I sort of considered him the same. He didn't make any problems for anybody. One evening a guest asked Prabhupada, what do you think of Jesus Christ? And Prabhupada replied, he is the Son of God. Then he added that he, the guest, was also a Son of God. Everyone was interested to hear the Swami that he accepted Jesus Christ as the Son of God. Gopal, his intent was not to have you change your way of life. He wasn't telling anybody they should be vegetarian or anything. All he wanted you to do was to follow what you are, but be better. He didn't stress that we should give up many things. Srila Prabhupada followed a regulated daily schedule. Every morning he would walk the 6 or 7 blocks from the YMCA to the Sterling Apartments, arriving there about 7 o'clock. When he had first landed in New York, he had in his luggage a large bundle of dried cereal, similar to rolled oats. chip rice, flat rice. This supply was enough for several weeks, and every morning at breakfast he would take some with his milk. At 7:45 Gopal would leave for work, and around 9:30 Prabhu would start preparing his lunch in the kitchen. He made his chapatis by hand without even a rolling pin. He worked alone for 2 hours, while Mrs. Agarwal did housework and took care of her children. 11:30 he took prashadam. Sally, when he cooked he used only one burner. The bottom level pot created the steam. He had the dal on the bottom, and it created the steam to cook many other vegetables. So for about a week he was cooking this great big lunch, which was ready about 11:30, and Gopal always came home for lunch about 12. I used to serve Gopal a sandwich and then we'd go back to work. But it didn't take me long to realize that the food the Swami was cooking, we'd enjoy it too. So we started cooking that new meal for all of us. Oh, and we enjoyed it so much. Wow. And out of all the people in the world, this couple, the Agarwals, were getting daily lunch cooked by Prabhupada. Isn't that incredible? I don't know if anyone else in the movement ever had that exact privilege. It's special. Some special people somehow. Our fun was to show him what we knew of America, and he had never seen such things. It was such fun to take him to the supermarket. He loved opening the packages of okra or frozen beans, and he didn't have to clean them and cut them and do all those things. He opened the freezer every day and just chose his items. It was fun to watch him. He sat on the couch while I swept with the vacuum cleaner, and he was so interested in that. And he talked for a long time about that. He was so interesting. So every day we'd have this big feast, and everything was great fun. We really enjoyed it. I would help him cut the things. He would spice it and we would laugh. He was the most enjoyable man, I really felt like a sort of daughter to him, even in such a short time. Like he was my father-in-law. He was friend to my father-in-law, but I really felt very close to him. He enjoyed everything. I liked him. I thought he was tremendous. This Sayago. After lunch, Prabhupada would leave about 1 p.m. and walk to the YMCA where the Agarwals figured he must have worked at his writing until about 5. He would come back to their apartment about 6 in the evening after he had taken their meal. They ate meat, for Mrs. Agarwal was careful to have it cleared away before he came. One night he came early. She said, "Oh, Swamiji, we've just cooked meat and the smell will be very disagreeable to you." But he said, "Oh, think nothing of it, think nothing of it." In the evening he would speak to guests, or with guests. The guests would usually take coffee and other refreshments, but he would request a glass of warm milk at 9 o'clock. He would stay speaking until 9:30 your time. And then Mr. Agarwal would drive him back to the YMCA. Prabhupada would also do his own laundry every day. He washed his clothes in the Agarwal's bathroom and hung them to dry outside. Now this is just a short version of the conversation which Prabhupada had with Sally Agarwal. Actually what Prabhupada was doing in the bathroom, his little American apartment, he was washing his clothes in the sink and wringing them out, and there was water all over the floor. And the water was dripping through the floor. So she got a little bit concerned and had to kind of almost admonish her about that, to not wash his clothes in the bathroom, because you don't do that in America. People don't wash their own clothes. It's the last thing you do. So I wish I did have it, but I didn't put it in here. And so she was very concerned. Then Prabhupada would take it onto the lawn at the back and put them out like you do in India. Sometimes you see on the fields, the laundry, the cloth is just spread out on top of the grass. He would spread all this cloth out on the grass like that for drying. Quite a scene. He was doing just the same thing as he did in India, basically. He sometimes accompanied the Agarwals to the laundromat and was interested to see how Americans washed and dried their clothes. To Sally, he seemed very interested in the American ways and people. The Prabhupada may not have been interested in the same way that we are, but he wanted to, understand how the Americans lived and what their, reactions and culture was, so he could communicate with them in a way which they could relate with. He was just studying their ways and behavior. Sally, our son Bridge was 6 to 7 months old when the Swami came, and the Indians loved boys. The Swami liked Bridge. He was there when Bridge first stood. The first time Bridge made the attempt and actually succeeded. I'm going to swing back to the pictures. And this is a picture of Prabhupada with Bridge. This is Bridge making his first time he stood on his 2 feet. And Prabhupada's already, you can see how happy Prabhupada is. He's absolutely enamored and fascinated with the achievement of this young kid, Bridge. And this is Prabhupada cooking, although it doesn't show too much about the pots and pans, but he's in the Agrawal's kitchen. This is literally in that kitchen, and he's cooking lunch, presumably lunch. Yeah, I think chapati is in the flat pan there. I think it looks like chapati anyway, in the pan. Prabhupada's preparing his lunch. So, Swami liked Bridge, so he was here when he first stood. The first time Bridge made the attempt and actually succeeded, the Swami stood up and clapped. It was a celebration. Another time, our baby teased on the Swami's shoes. I don't know if you've had an experience with your kids teasing, sometimes they like to chew things, put things in their mouth and chew away, anything. So little Bridge picked up one of Prabhupada's shoes and started to chew it. He's now tried to, no teeth, but and then so it was kind of quite a thing. Where are we here? Oh no, she thought, those shoes, they've been all over India, my kid is chewing on them. You know how her mother would feel. Almost every night, which you can consider, transcendentally, I guess it was a really amazing act, chewing on the spiritual master's shoes. Almost every night he used to sit in the next door neighbour's backyard. I don't know if he knew it was there. We sat out there sometimes with him, or we stayed in the living room. One time something happened with that little girl, Camille, who was only 3 years old. I used to take her to Sunday school, and she learned about Jesus in Sunday school. And when she would see Swamiji with his robes on and everything, she called him Swami Jesus. And this one time, when it first dawned on us what she was saying, she called him Swami Jesus. And Swami smiled and said, and a little child shall lead them. It was so funny. You see that in the Bible. Prabhupada spoke to various groups in the community. He spoke at the Lions Club in early October and received a formal document. And this was the Lions Club at that time. I think they moved their property 2 times. I traced it down. This was the building Prabhupada walked, probably, I can't guarantee, but probably walked in that door to give a talk in the Lions Club. You know what Lions Club is? It's not a club where there are all lions standing. He was speaking to the lions. Lord, the Srinivas dressed up. No, Lions Club. What is the Lions Club? Very in England and not here.
It's a donation of the eyes and
Pardon?
they donate the cornea eye graft.
They donate eyes.
Graft.
That's really good. They may do that. What it is more than just an eye donation club. What is the Lions Club? That's
It's
right.
like a philanthropic society for well.
Philanthropic society, generally of respectful people in society, meet together and try to arrange help for various needed situations. Philanthropic society, usually very well-to-do people. They're tell you what to do, and they want to help others or not. But that was the Lions Club. He spoke there. There's nothing said much about what he said, but he did receive a formal document. And this is from the Lions Club. Be it known that A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami was a guest of the Lions Club of Butler, Pennsylvania, and as an expression of appreciation for services rendered, the club tenders this acknowledgement. A little useful if you're going to other places to speak that you've been recognised. He also gave a talk at the Y and I don't know what the Y is, and at the St. Fidelis Seminary College in Herman, Pennsylvania, and he spoke regularly to guests in the Agua home. Now we'll go back, then we'll see. This is the St. Fidelis, whatever it was, seminary, like a monastery type, not a monastery, like a monastic place where they used to teach monks and young Christians and things. So that's one of the places, quite an impressive building, about 10 kilometres or something like that out of Butler, just outside the city. And Prabhupada spoke there also. As a postcard, I found these old postcards of the various buildings where Prabhupada went. St. Fidelis Seminary in 1965 or something. And then that was another speech which he made. That's where Christian monks were a little bit worried. He was speaking to these young men who were being trained in theology or something. And then another important event took place. When that article came up in the Butler Eagle, one professor in a nearby university, this university is not too far from Butler, and it's called Slippery Rock. It's a state college, it's university now. Slippery Rock State College. When Professor Larson, the chairman of the philosophy department at Slippery Rock State College, read in the Butler Eagle of a visiting Indian Swami and Vedic scholar, he phoned the Agrawal's home to invite Prabhupada to lecture on campus. Alan Larson, I called the number given in the newspaper article, but it turned out the Swamiji was actually staying in a room at the YMCA. When I arrived, he was waiting on the street corner, and I picked him up. He seemed very much alone. When we were driving to Slippery Rock, I asked him to pronounce his name for me, so I'd have it right when I introduced him to my class. He said, Swamiji Bhaktivedanta, and then he proceeded to tell me what that meant. Since I was not used to Indian names, he had to repeat it several times before I got it right. He showed no impatience with my slowness. Even at its early junction of our association, I was convinced that this man had an inner stability and strength that would be very difficult to shake. And this initial impression was further reinforced throughout the rather busy day. I'll show you a picture of that college. First of all, it's 22 miles north of Butler, where that Slippery Rock State College was. Butler at the bottom there, and we went up that road to Slippery Rock. And Prabhupada gave a talk there. And this is again a postcard of the main building at that time of that particular state college. Very nice. These main college campus grounds were all very, very, very nice. There was many trees, and lakes, and parks, and so on. For the students. Okay, that's the end of that. So Prabhupada spoke there during the day. 100 students in several classes gathered to hear the lecture. As Prabhupada, in his natural, unrehearsed manner, walked down the aisle, up to 3 wooden steps, and onto the plain wooden stage, he sat down erect and cross-legged, and began softly singing Hare Krishna, his eyes closed. Then he stood and spoke without a lectern or microphone, and answered questions from the audience. The program lasted only 50 minutes, and ended abruptly with a bell signaling the next class. Alan Larson, after the first class, I had a short conversation with the Swamiji while sitting outside on a bench on the campus lawn. Most of the time when he was not directly engaged in conversation, he would repeat a short prayer while moving prayer beads through his fingers. He was sitting up cross-legged, and we were speaking back and forth. He said that the trees around us were beautiful, and he asked, what kind of trees are these? I replied, they're shade trees. Then he said that it was too bad they weren't fruit or nut trees to provide food and benefit people. Actually, Alan Larson said, I agreed with him. It isn't mentioned here. It would be good if they were nuts and fruit trees. At 1 o'clock, Prabhupada lectured again. Afterwards, he accompanied Dr. Mohan Sharma, that's an Indian man, a member of the faculty who had attended the lecture, and his 16-year-old daughter, Minnie, to Dr. Sharma's campus residence. Prabhupada accepted warm milk and dry fruit, and at Dr. Sharma's request, blessed his home and touched the forehead of his daughter in a gesture of benediction. Around 3 o'clock, Professor Larson drove him back to Alan Larson. The Swami seemed to present himself as an Indian scholar who had come for a short time to do translation work. I never thought of him as a missionary, but during the course of the day there grew in me a warm affection for this man, because he was unmistakably a good man who had found his way to a stability and peace that is very rare. The lectures in Pennsylvania gave Prabhupada his first readings of how his message would be received in America. At Commonwealth Pier in Boston, he had stated in his poem, I'm sure that when this transcendental message penetrates their hearts, they will certainly feel enlightened and thus become liberated from all unhappy conditions of life. Now, this principle is actually being tested in the field. Would they be able to understand? Were they interested? Would they surrender? And on October the 15th, just before Prabhupada left Butler, he received a letter from Samadhi Maharaj. Puja Swami, I am in due receipt of your letter dated 24th of November. I'm glad to know that you have safely reached the USA after suffering from seasickness. I thank you for your greetings and blessings. I know by now that you must have recovered fully from the sickness and must be keeping good health. I was delighted to read that you have started your activities in the States and have already delivered some lectures. I pray to Lord Balakrishna to give you enough strength to enable you to carry the message of Sri Bhagavan. I feel that you should stay there until you fully recover from your illness and return only after you have completed your mission. Oh, here everything is normal. With respect, yours sincerely, Srimati Maharaj. Prabhupada regards the last line of this letter as especially significant. His well-wisher was urging him to stay in America until he had completed his mission. He had told the immigration officials in New York he would be staying for 2 months. I have 1 month sponsorship in Butler, he thought. Then I have no support, so perhaps I can stay another month. So he had said 2 months. Srimati Maharaj, however, was urging him to stay on. He saw that the prospects for preaching to the Americans were good, but he felt he would need support from India. At any rate, he had spent long enough in Butler, and he now had 1 month left in America. So he decided to go to New York City and try to preach there before his time was up. But first he wanted to visit Philadelphia, where he had arranged a meeting with a Sanskrit scholar, Dr. Norman Brown, at the University of Pennsylvania. Mrs. Agarwal was sorry to see him go. Sally, after a month, I really loved the Swami. I felt protective in a way, and he wanted to go to Philadelphia, but I couldn't imagine. I told him I could not imagine him going to Philadelphia for 2 days. He was going to speak there and then to New York, but he knew no one in New York. If the thing didn't pan out in Philadelphia, he was just going straight to New York, and then there was no one. I just couldn't imagine. It made me sick. I remember the night he was leaving, about 2 in the morning, I remember sitting there as long as he could wait before Gopal took him to Pittsburgh to get on that bus. Gopal got a handful of change, and I remember telling him how to put the money in the slot so that he could take a bath at the bus station, because he was supposed to take a bath a few times a day. And Gopal told him how to do that, and told him about the automats in New York. He told him what he could eat and what he couldn't eat, and he gave him these coins in a sock. That's all he left with. As a sannyasi, Srila Prabhupada was used to picking up and leaving one place for another. As a mendicant preacher, he had no remorse about leaving behind the quiet life of the Butler YMCA, and he had no attachment to the domestic habitat, where he would cook and talk with Sally Agarwal about vacuum cleaners, frozen foods, and American ways. But why had he gone to Butler? And why was he going to New York? He saw this Krishna's grace. As a pure devotee of Krishna, he wanted to be an instrument for distributing Krishna consciousness. His stay in Butler had been helpful. He had gotten first-hand experience of American life, and he gained confidence that his health was strong and his message communicable. He was glad to see that America had the necessary ingredients for his Indian vegetarian diet, and that people could understand his English. He had learned that casual, one-time lectures here and there were of limited value, and although there would be opposition from the established religions, people individually were very much interested in what he had to say. On October the 18th, he left Butler via Philadelphia for New York City. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. There's a lot, again I say this interview which Satyaraj Prabhu had recorded in the Back to Godhead magazine with Sally Agarwal and others, goes into more depth of Sally Agarwal's feelings towards Prabhu. She describes him as the most humble, pure-hearted person. So many wonderful words he's expressing in regards to Srila Prabhupada. An ordinary American lady with so much appreciation for Srila Prabhupada. It wasn't what he said so much, but just by his conscious being, his presence, his behavior, his attitude. Krishna consciousness movement is attracting mainly on that basis. Behavior, as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained, that religious principles are established by the behavior of the devotee, not by what they say, but by their behavior. So Srila Prabhupada's behavior completely captivated the heart of Sally Agarwal. He was so attractive. So bear that in mind. Hare Krishna. Thank you all very much. Are there any questions? Yes, Prabhupada.
We often hear statements of Prabhupada saying, for example, health, sadhana, service. As well, I recently heard one Christian activist who was killed. He just was killed a few days ago. So he was a Christian preacher. So he said something like, in his life he puts God first, then family, then country. So in our life as devotees, like for example, family people, is it still the same sort of formula? God, priorities, God, family, and then country, or in our case, service probably, or institution.
I would let's say address that in terms of a very wonderful thing because it's Krishna consciousness. It's not just a process leading to an objective goal. It's a state of consciousness. So what is the meaning of putting God in the center? What does it mean to us? What would that mean to you, putting God in the center?
Just chant your rounds every day as early as possible.
If your child was sick, would you chant your rounds?
No.
You look after your child. You're going to use your common sense. Now why are you doing that? Now it may be because we're attached to the child, it may be out of duty, it may be some other reasons. But we understand. The same thing with this body. Sometimes we hear that Prabhupada said first health, and then your practice of devotion service. So a necessarily, and more, maybe in terms of ultimate goal of life is to love God. But in our practical dealings, we see our family in relation to God. We don't see them as outside of the realm of God consciousness or inferior to that objective purpose of Krishna consciousness. We try to see Krishna consciousness in everything we do, whether it's our work, whether it's our family, whether it's our studies, whatever it may be, our sadhana. We try to always have that in mind. It's not like Sunday, one day a week, you go to church or something. Krishna consciousness is 24/7. We're trying to be conscious of Krishna in everything we do. This is a primary instruction of guiding, a line of Bhagavad Gita. In all that you do, be conscious of me. So in that way, it's not like a sort of like, oh, don't bother me now, I've got to put Krishna in the center. You know? Did you say the same thing if Krishna came in your room? Could you come back later? I'm chanting my rounds. And there's Krishna stood there, you don't know who it is. Come back later, I've got to chant my rounds. I'm trying to be Krishna conscious, but don't bother me now, please. You know, it's got to be a little bit broader than just boom, 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 like a machine. We're not machines. Now, for those who are, let's say, whatever stage we're on, sometimes we have to give a little bit A, B, C in terms of black, a bit more black and white. But ultimately, it's not, because everything is related to Krishna. Everything is his property. Everybody, when Krishna sends you a child, this is Krishna's blessing, his mercy, and it's our good fortune if we see that child. And we can't force, the child is an individual soul, but we give that child every loving opportunity we can to become attracted to Krishna. We see that caring for the child is actually service to Krishna in the sense of trying to do that, not just because it's our child or it's our duty, but to give the child an opportunity to become attracted to Krishna. So it's an act of devotion. Every activity in Grihastha life can be seen as an act of devotion. Again, it depends on our consciousness, because putting Krishna in the center means, one aspect of it certainly means to act in the way Krishna would be pleased, but it also means to be conscious of Krishna. So being conscious of Krishna, Arjuna was not chanting 16 rounds. He wasn't going up for Mangal Arati. He wasn't doing Arati before the battle occurred, Kshatriya. I don't know, probably maybe he's offering food, I don't know. But he wasn't studying. Hold the battle up, I haven't finished my morning 1 hour's reading yet. I've still got 9 rounds left. You tell Karna to wait, I've still got 9 rounds left. You know? That wasn't the case. Arjuna was completely Krishna conscious. He was fighting at his role, so knowing what our priorities are in relationship with Krishna, try to see it like that. So we don't have to be so. We might say that sometimes, that's to remind us that we should be conscious of Krishna. First and foremost in family life is Krishna's in the center. But that doesn't mean you put Krishna in the center, it doesn't matter what you do in family life. They go on simultaneously. In your family life you try to put Krishna in the center, it doesn't mean, you forget your family life and just put Krishna in the center. You don't. Both go on simultaneously. That applies in everything you do, basically. Is that okay? Anything else? Any other comments? Maybe you can think of something else about Prabhupada staying in Butler. I would look at the streets that Prabhupada would have walked down. You can do that, if you want to Google Map, you can sort of, most of the houses are probably still there, I wouldn't be surprised. You can imagine walking down the street with Srila Prabhupada in Butler on a morning walk. Yes, Jen.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I was thinking, I missed the class yesterday, I was mostly with baby, but I was here before yesterday, and I found it just amazing that this compilation that you made and the research you made. And is it something, maybe?
Well, it's all there in the various places in the books. I'm sure someone else has done a much more comprehensive. I would have done, but I just had no time.
So I was thinking, maybe, is it something you're thinking of publishing?
No.
Making available?
Just did it a few days ago. I did one bit on Sunday, one bit yesterday, and one bit this morning. I mean, I could, you know, but I'd have to do a lot more study, put it in better order. I've got quite a few other bits and pieces which I didn't incorporate or mention tonight on this stay in Butler.
Because I would be interested to get a copy of.
Yeah, it would be nice to meditate on Prabhupada's arrival. I think it's very kind of, gives a lot of strength to us to realise what Prabhupada went through and to remember that and be conscious of that, what he had to tolerate and what he, you know, alone, completely alone in that service. That's something we don't really see much example of these days. Someone was telling me, I was talking to Dan and Jayapur one Saraswati this afternoon, just remembering how, you know, how the Buddha was so bold, and he came in a bit after that era, but I mean, when I joined it was still like that. You know, you'd be sent out pretty much as soon as you joined, sometimes on your own to open up a temple somewhere. You know, they were very bold, very almost fearless almost, because they had confidence in Prabhupada. They were very much taking charge. Oh, yeah. A little bit late tonight, ladies.
Yes.
Oh, you came together. Wow. Better late than never. I was thinking of you. I wondered if you were going to join us or not. You had college today?
Yes.
Studying.
My nephew.
Your nephew?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, wonderful. Are you also studying here?
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, is it your home? You know, just talk to the Lord whenever you're free. Yeah. Yeah, it's nice. And in Nilamrita, as we mentioned on the first day, many things were not known and Sastru Mashkampada. There's a lot of writer's license there, no doubt. But he's done a remarkable job of piecing it all together in a way which is so readable and so informative and so attractive. Remarkable. As others have in their own eras of association with Prabhupada, whether it's Samsundar or Hari Sori or Sri Kirti, Mukunda, and so many others who put together their biographies, or their, not so much a biography, but their remembrances of Srila Prabhupada, or their realizations, their time with Srila Prabhupada. We don't want to spend our whole life in it. We want to fulfill, as I mentioned maybe last night, the night, the day before, I can't remember, or maybe it was this morning online, I think, about our relationship with Prabhupada. Every devotee has a relationship with Srila Prabhupada, even you, every one of us here, you do too. You may not know quite what it is, but you do have a relationship with him, at least it's through the inspiration, the instructions which Srila Prabhupada has given us. So for most of us, our relationship with Prabhupada was one of serving his will. There are two kinds, Barbara Muni mentioned it, Prabhupada told him this. And he said that there are two types of devotees, the father and the mother. Fatherly devotees and motherly devotees. Okay? The motherly devotees are very much concerned with the institution. They're both important. It maintains the institution. The fatherly ones are the ones who want to spread the institution, serve the message of the spiritual master, spread it to others. So whatever it is, our business is to serve the will of the spiritual master. That's how we attract the attention of Krishna. Prabhupada said, don't try to see Krishna, act in the way Krishna will see you. So the way that works is we serve Krishna's representative. Can't directly go to him. We serve his representative as best we can by finding out what he wants and trying to do it. We don't know, we ask. Try to do things the way that Krishna's representative would like. The secret of success is service to the spiritual master in Krishna consciousness. Service means not necessarily according to the way we would like to do it, but what they Prabhupada wants, what he would like, how we would like it. Just whatever it is we're doing, we can keep that in mind of thinking it's just the way Prabhupada would like it. Obviously we're not always up to the mark, but as much as possible, is this how Prabhupada would like me to behave? Would he like me to dress like this? Would he like me to eat like this? Would you like me to live like this, work like this, talk like this? This is, even in a family or love between a man and a woman is probably quite concerned to behave in a way that will attract the boy's attention. quite like it. Vice versa, maybe. Especially the lady dressed in a certain way, put the right perfume on, and talk the way, if she wants to attract the attention of the boy, she'll do those things. So we don't know how to attract Krishna's attention, so we learn from those who are dear representatives of the Lord, pure devotees of the Lord. They can show us how to be Krishna conscious, what to do to awaken our dormant love of God. This is what Prabhupada came to do at the beginning, to awaken that, to remind us of our relationship with Krishna. Because you're always thinking of Krishna whenever you're around a pure devotee of the Lord. You naturally, even if you're talking of washing machines and lawn and floor cleaners and whatever else, your frozen food, then Prabhupada would always relate that to Krishna. Even if he didn't say it, he was relating it to Krishna. Whether he was talking with what's his name, about motor racing expert, and Prabhupada would talk to him about motor racing, but he'd always be bringing it back to relating it to Krishna. He'd always bring the conversation somewhere along the line towards Krishna. So everything in our life is like the expertise of a pure devotee who sees everyone and everything in relation to Krishna and helps us to do likewise. Anything else? Thank you. Yes, Krishna.
I think it was really interesting, Maharaj, just how Srila Prabhupada has a comfortable life in Butler. Yeah, he was getting prasadam, he had an accommodation to stay, but still he took that step to step into that discomfort.
The risk, you could say. Stepping into don't know what, basically speaking. He had an address of Dr. Mishra. It was not complete yet. He had communicated with his yoga teacher in New York named Dr. Mishra, who was willing to give him some kind of initial, very initial shelter in his apartment, yoga studio. So he had some little thing there, but nothing confirmed, nothing, didn't know what it was either. So it was quite risky, you could say. He had no money as well. It was quite something. Yeah, it is. But we see that. I mean, you take an example, for instance, third canto Srimad Bhagavatam, Devahuti, or Kapila Deva. Kardama Muni, was going to leave home after Devahuti had many daughters, but she approached him and begged him, I need a son. So he gave her a son. And it was none other than an expansion of the Lord, at least a partial expansion of the Lord's Kapila. And immediately, after the child was born, maybe a little while later, Kardama left home. Now, the goal of life is to chain Krishna, but Krishna appeared more or less as his son. Where would he leave home? Sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? Kind of walking away from your goal almost. But no, he had a purpose. The Lord had a purpose. Part of the Lord's purpose was what Kardama did. He showed that even in that situation, he was supposed to, the husband, at least in Brahmin families, with Kshatriya family, would show that higher example of the goal of life. And it sounds contradictory to Guru Bhakti's point in one sense, but it's not in the real sense of the term. For the highest purpose of all. The different examples are to be seen in different situations. And we see Lord Chaitanya, he told the Kurma Brahmana, don't leave home, stay at home. You, Kurma Brahmana, want to leave home and go with Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya said, no, don't be a fool, don't be a madman. Stay here. Krishna you stay here and you preach Bhagavatam right where you are now. You don't need to go anywhere. Where you are now, preach. So different situations require different, let's say, responses. Prabhupada did not go to the rest of the world for a comfortable life, that's for sure. He left that all behind in Vrindavan. He left it behind in his family life to go to Vrindavan, and in Vrindavan he was spiritually very comfortable, no risk really, left there to go to America. He didn't want to sit in an eerie room. One of his godbrothers, he asked Tirtha Maharaj, who was the head of the Chaitanya Mat in Calcutta, Prabhupada asked him if he could give him sannyas, and he said maybe later on. The first thing is you come here and stay with us. We have nice, airy, well-lit rooms you can stay in. We will look after you, and if we think it's worth looking at the books, maybe we will publish them, or maybe in the future send them to the West. Prabhupada was impressed. He didn't want to live in an airy, comfortable room. He wanted to preach Krishna consciousness. That was why everything he did at this stage of his life was for that purpose, and certainly he didn't come to America to live in a little tiny town in Pennsylvania. And yes, he's doing some preaching, something going on, but that wasn't why he came to America. He came to America to really see if he could fulfill his spiritual master's order to preach in America, preach in the English language. We took that absolute risk. What is there to lose? And after all, we said the other day, you've got to lose everything anyway. Can't keep anything, we're going to lose everything, isn't it? No matter what we've got, we've got to say goodbye to it sooner or later. Family, money, house, wife, everything. Car, mobile phone, you have to say goodbye to everything. Isn't it? What do you think? What do you think? You don't? Nothing. Can't keep anything. His body, say goodbye to his body. Even our false teeth, you have to say goodbye to everything. In bank balance, you already said goodbye to that one anyway. Nothing there. So, well, really, you haven't got anything to lose. We're always afraid, you know, the unknown. Read Bhagavatam, study the Bhagavatam, understand how Krishna works, the higher purpose.
In the letter Prabhupada wrote to Narayan Maharaj, one of the sentences, one of the statements he made was, although people here are outcasts, I'm still not afraid to speak about Varnashrama Dharma.
All the people here are outcasts.
I'm still not afraid to speak about Varnashrama Dharma.
Not afraid of speaking about it.
Varnashrama.
You say he wasn't afraid to speak about Varnashrama.
Yeah, Prabhupada mentioned that.
He mentioned Varnashrama outside the Varnashrama system, therefore you're anti-Joe, you're an outcast, we're all outcasts, the whole world is outcast practically, in that sense. So, I mean, Prabhupada was writing to Narayana, he wasn't necessarily addressing somebody at that stage, and he was writing to a devotee who knew these things very well. So yes, he was, I mean, there are many indications. I know we are perhaps a little bit hesitant or confused, or unsure about what Prabhupada really had in mind when it came to Varnashram. Some people may not think, maybe they're more convinced of what to be done. But generally people are a little bit hesitant about this principle of life. We are organising society, not just Varnashram, daily Varnashram, but organising society in the way that the Lord would want, the way that would be more favourable for becoming Krishna conscious, and not just the way society is now, which is based on artificial monetary systems, and people are all over the place, don't know who they are, where they are, what they're doing half the time. The very structure of society based on the God-given system of Varnashram Dharma, according to one's nature, according to one's qualities, one acts accordingly. The society is so complicated now, it's very difficult to let's say, put things in that situation. But to some extent, it should be endeavoured or understood, probably wanted that. So he was talking about it in the early days, and he's definitely talking about it in his latter days also, Varnashram system. But he was primarily mentioning that letter that they're outcasts, therefore they're not really, generally speaking, in a position to understand this message, generally. He's not been educated, they're not familiar with his principles, his way of life, his culture. He was saying how amazing it is despite that, they're showing interest in his culture. Culture of Krishna consciousness. It's not culture, it's not just dance and music and drama. Culture is a cultivation of a way of life with an objective goal. Practices of a culture or society. Culture, yoga culture, to produce something. So that culture is really one ashram, the actual living aspect of the culture. The society with God in the center, with everyone playing their part according to their qualities of work, not according to their birth. To some extent, I say the missing link is the ideal, the God-centered Ishalashan Dhamsa, the society is not generally God-centered. It's centered on our needs, on ourselves, but not so much on what God would desire, Krishna would desire. That's the missing link. So Prabhupada especially came to give us that missing link, to give us that connection with God, Krishna, and help us to understand how we can best live our life for the pleasure of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Or Premanandi.
Janānanda Goswami Maharaj ki.
Well, our ringleader is not here tonight. Where is he? The ringleader didn't come. Who's the ringleader in absence?
Pastor Seshpur.
Finger or somebody else. Rajendra. Where's Ramai and Vrinda?